Coming up on this Tuesday edition of Daybreak, President Park Geun-hye again suggests she's willing to hold an inter-Korean summit if it can lead to unification. She also says it's time to radically overhaul South Korea's economy. Nearly 9 months after the disaster, Korean lawmakers approve a special bill that will compensate the families of the victims of the Sewol-ho ferry sinking. Plus, the White House admits it should have sent someone with a higher profile to the anti-terrorism march in Paris. Daybreak begins now. Hello and thanks for joining us. To our viewers around the world, it's 6 a.m. on Tuesday, January 13th here in Seoul. I'm Mark Broome and you're tuned in to Daybreak. We begin with President Park Geun-hye's New Year's press conference, where she laid out what she plans to do in her third year in office, taking us through some of the key points on inter-Korean ties, the economy and a reshuffling of her administration. Here's our presidential office correspondent, Chae-sun.
Addressing the nation on Monday, President Park pledged to lay the groundwork for peaceful unification on the Korean peninsula, as this year marks the 70th anniversary of the division of the two Koreas with their liberation from Japanese colonial rule. As a means to improve inter-Korean ties, President Park expressed her hope for holding reunions for families separated by the Korean War around the time of the Lunar New Year holiday next month. The president then said she's open to talks with her North Korean counterpart as long as it would help the two Koreas peacefully unite.
그 비핵화 같은 거 이거가 전혀 해결이 안 되는데 이게 전제 조건은 아니지만 이것이 해결이 전혀 안 되는데 평화 통일을 얘기할 수가 없거든요.
President Park spent a large portion of her time talking about her economic innovation plan, saying this year will offer Korea a final chance to leap forward. She then told the nation she was sorry for the confusion that followed documents leaked from her office and vowed to ensure such acts are not repeated. Stressing how the prosecution has found no proof of her aides intervening in state affairs, the president said she has no plans to immediately replace any of them. As for her chief of staff, she said now is not the time to let him go.
이제 지금 여러 가지로 그 당면한 현안들이 많이 있어서 그 문제들을 좀 이렇게 수습을 먼저 해야 되지 않겠느냐. 그래서 그 일들이 끝나고 나서 또 결정할 문제라고 그렇게 생각을 합니다.
It's clear what President Park's main goal is for this year, revitalizing the economy. But her firm position about her aides' alleged abuse of power and determination not to replace them anytime soon may deter parliamentary cooperation to secure legislative approval of the economy-related bills. Chae-sun, Arirang News.
Now, as Yusun just mentioned in her report there, a large portion of President Park's annual conference was also focused on ways to reform and upgrade Korea's economic fundamentals. For more details, here's our Lee Ji-yoon.
노동시장 개혁은 선택이 아니라 필수적인 생존 전략입니다.
Carrying out reforms in various economic sectors is President Park's #1 priority this year. And those reforms are part of her 3-year economic innovation plan, which she says will help keep Korea's low economic growth from falling into a long, drawn-out slump.
내수와 수출 이런 게 다 균형이 잡혀서 온기가 돌게 하는 그런 여러 가지 정책들을 올해 아주 모든 힘을 다해서 부지런히 실시를 하게 되면 우리가 지금 3.8%로 정부는 성장을 할 수 있다고 보는데 우리가 할 수 있다고 생각을 합니다.
In order to see such economic growth, the president said related entities such as trade unions and management must work together. As for the possibility of a cut in the nation's key interest rate, she plans to consult with macroeconomic policymakers to make a timely decision when needed. Easing regulations aimed at boosting the economy is also on the president's to-do list.
올해 2단계 규제 개혁을 성공적으로 추진하고 나면 기업과 외국인 투자자들은 더욱 자유롭게 투자할 수 있게 되고
And she believes that will lead to creating more jobs and eventually reviving the economy. But whether these measures will prop up the economy in the end remains to be seen. Some skeptics point out that the president's policies lack provisions to really help those with heavy financial burdens. Lee Jun, Arirang News.
Korea's National Assembly approved close to 100 bills on Monday, including a special bill covering the compensation of families directly affected by last year's Sewol-ho ferry sinking. Park Geun-hye reports.
The National Assembly has finally passed a special compensation bill for the victims and bereaved families of last April's Sewol-ho ferry disaster. It was passed on this Monday by a vote of 171 in favor to 3 against with 7 abstentions. The bill calls for a committee formed under the Prime Minister's office to decide on the terms of compensation. In addition, a trauma center will be set up in Ansan, the hometown of the high school students most affected by the tragedy, to provide them with psychiatric and mental health services. The Assembly also passed legislation aimed at promoting Korea's cruise industry, including allowing onboard casinos and developing port facilities for leisure vessels. A resolution to launch a parliamentary investigation into overseas energy development projects by previous administrations was also adopted. Lawmakers, however, delayed action on 2 key items originally on today's agenda. The so-called Kim Myung-lan Act, a comprehensive anti-corruption bill aimed at punishing public officials for bribery, was tabled until next month's extraordinary session after lawmakers from both political camps agreed it needed further review. Also delayed was the selection of special inspectors in charge of rooting out corruption among presidential aides. Bipartisan bickering kept lawmakers from selecting the candidates who now will be chosen next month. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
A US-based publishing firm has rejected a request from Japan for it to change information in one of its high school history textbooks, which states that women were forced into sexual slavery by Japanese soldiers during World War II. The Japanese daily Sankei Shimbun reported Monday that officials from the Japanese consulate in New York met with high-level employees from publishing giant McGraw-Hill, but the company didn't respond to that request. The textbook, titled Traditions and Encounters, A Global Perspective on the Past, says the Japanese army forcibly recruited, conscripted and dragooned as many as 200,000 young women and girls to serve in military brothels. The Japanese government made a formal request late last year, saying the information was inaccurate and parts of the textbook were not in line with Tokyo's stance. Now, North Korea's chief nuclear negotiator, Lee Yong-ho, is expected to meet with former US Special Envoy for North Korea policy Stephen Bosworth in Singapore this weekend. Diplomatic sources say the 2-day meeting of officials and security experts will be held on January 18th and 19th. This comes after North Korea offered to temporarily suspend its nuclear tests in exchange for a halt in joint South Korea-US military drills that are scheduled for March. Washington, however, rejected that offer, calling it, in fact, an implicit threat. Although the US government will not be involved in the talks, experts do say the upcoming meetings could be a chance to discuss the resumption of the 6-party talks on North Korea's denuclearization, which have been stalled since 2008. Time now for a look through the global headlines. We're following this hour from Seoul, Korea. For that, we turn to Eunice Kim, standing by for us at the News Center. Good morning, Eunice.
And good morning to you, Mark. Amid growing stern criticism that it did not send a higher-level leader to Sunday's Paris Unity rally, the White House has recognized its oversight in a rare admission of error.
Some have asked whether or not the United States should have sent someone with a higher profile than the ambassador to France. And I think it's fair to say that we should have sent someone with a higher profile to be there. That said, there is no doubt that the American people and this administration stand foursquare behind our allies in France as they face down this threat.
White House spokesman Josh Earnest went on to explain there was not enough notice ahead of the march to install the needed security for a presidential or vice presidential participation. The massive anti-terrorism rally had attracted a historic 3.7 million participants across the nation, according to the French Interior Ministry, including 40 world leaders. The U.S. had sent its ambassador to France, Jane Hartley. Belatedly, America's top diplomat John Kerry announced he would be heading to Paris at the end of this week for talks on countering extremist violence. Meanwhile, France is boosting its security across the country amid suspicions that sleeper cells were activated following last week's 3 days of terror that ended with 17 people killed at the hands of 3 Islamist suspects. It said it will deploy 10,000 troops through Tuesday, some of whom will guard the hundreds of Jewish sites in the country. A group claiming to support the Islamic State hacked into key social media sites of the U.S. Central Command, posting messages such as, "American soldiers, we are coming, watch your back." The Pentagon quickly suspended CENTCOM's Twitter and YouTube accounts and said it doesn't appear any classified material was breached. The attack occurred as President Barack Obama was giving a speech on cybersecurity. Meanwhile, the Vatican is downplaying reports that it could be the next target of deadly Islamist attacks. Israeli state TV on Sunday had reported that the Holy See could be next after France, citing U.S. intelligence sources. The Vatican spokesman said that it will show caution and attention, but that it has not received any specific threats. And related to France, newly released security footage appeared to show the partner of the Paris supermarket attacker, Hayat Boumediene, going through passport control on January 2nd. She is now thought to be in Syria. And finally, during a visit to India and ahead of a meeting with his Iranian counterpart, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry said he would seek to lay the groundwork for a fruitful round of negotiations to end a 12-year-old dispute over Iran's nuclear program. Negotiators with 6 major powers had failed to reach a deal with Tehran, passing a second self-imposed deadline back in November. The meeting of foreign ministers is to be followed by lower-level talks the next day.
We start before the sun rises to bring you the latest stories out of Korea. We also lead the way with important global coverage. Stay on the pulse of what is happening with Daybreak.
Now, taking a very ambitious step to slash its greenhouse gas emissions, Korea has launched a brand new carbon trading market. The market, which instantly became the second largest in the world, is part of the Korean government's efforts to cut emissions by roughly a third by the end of the decade. For more on how this new cap-and-trade program will affect hundreds of companies here in Korea, Kim Ji-yeon reports.
A carbon emissions trading market opened at the headquarters of the Korea Exchange in Busan on Monday. More than 500 business entities are participating in the market to buy and sell leftover emissions credits, much like a stock exchange. Around 1,200 tons of emissions credits were bought and sold during the first day of trading. The price for 15 Korea allowance units rose nearly 10% to around 8,600 Korean won, or roughly $8 US. 1 KAU is equivalent to 1 ton of carbon dioxide gas.
It will require continuous preparation and interest from business entities. Additional emissions quotas could be necessary if they're building additional plants.
The government allocated nearly 1.6 billion tons of greenhouse gas emissions to around 500 participating companies. This round of emissions credits expires in 2017. Companies releasing more than 1 ton of chemical substances are required by law to participate in the emissions trading market. Among the participating companies are some of the country's biggest conglomerates, including Samsung Steel Industries and Hanwha Fine Chemical Corporation. Korea is the 7th biggest carbon emitter in the world, releasing nearly 2% of global greenhouse gas emissions. Kim Jeon, Arirang News.
Now, aside from the odd IPO here and there by some big-name companies, major headlines from the Korean stock market were very few and far between last year. But many market watchers think it's going to be a different story this year. For more on how prices could move and what investors should perhaps look out for, here's our Song Ji-sun.
2014 was a lackluster year for the Korean stock market. The benchmark Kospi index closed the year at 1915, 100 points lower than it started, a year after being trapped in the 200-point range and below the 2,100-point barrier. This year, with the country's economic recovery picking up pace, market analysts expect the Kospi to break out of this pattern and top 2,200, most probably in third or fourth quarter. Among the main factors setting the tone for the market were the Fed's decision to raise its key interest rate and the performance of Samsung Electronics, which accounts for 14% of the overall market capitalization. Many analysts believe the Fed's rate hike will have a limited impact on the bourse, but the big question about Samsung is whether it can shore off its poor smart performance from the third quarter of last year.
We are expecting a low of 1870 and a high of 2260. There could be some adjustments in the first half following rate changes in the U.S., but the stock market will rise at a moderate rate in the second half.
One main theme for the market this year will be dividend payments. Last year, big-name IPOs took center stage, partly due to the listing of Sewol Industries, the de facto holding company of the Samsung Group, and its affiliate Samsung SDS. But the number of companies seeking IPOs will drop by half to around 30 this year. Among them are low-cost airlines Jeju Air and Air Busan and Hyundai Group's advertising arm, Innocean. The focus this year will be on how shareholders benefit from a government policy on increasing dividend payments. Policymakers have voiced concerns that too many companies are stocking away too much money for reserves and that Korea's dividend payout ratio is lower than that of emerging or developed markets.
We will seek to increase the influence of shareholders in deciding dividend plans to make them more reasonable and help institutional investors to become more involved in the process.
Now, another point to look out for in 2015 is whether the Korean market can be included in the developed market category on the MSCI index, which is an important factor when global fund managers draw up their investment portfolios. Korea has been regarded as an emerging market, largely because of its currency's limited convertibility and limits on foreign investors' ability to trade in securities. The question of whether Seoul has made progress on improving investment conditions will be decided in June. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News.
Well, it's that time of year again. It's time for the annual Korea Image Awards. They were held last night and prizes were dished out to the organizations, brands or people that represented Korea the best over the past 12 months. So who were the winners of this year's event? Connie Lee was there and she filed this report.
So who or what did the best job in promoting Korea this past year? According to one source, it's Korean cosmetics company Amore Pacific. The company was given the Korea Image Stepping Stone Award this year at the 11th CICI Korea ceremony, hosted by the Korea Image Communication Institute. Amore Pacific was awarded for best representing Korean beauty to the world with its cosmetics brands such as Sarasu and Laneige.
We will continue to work hard to make this world more beautiful and happier.
Another honoree was none other than Chinese actress Tang Wei, who was given the Korea Image Stepping Stone Bridge Award for her efforts in promoting Korean culture. She's best known by locals for her role in the 2010 film Late Autumn, directed by her now husband, Kim Tae-young.
This year is the year of the sheep. Born in the year of the sheep myself, I feel like getting this award is a great start to this new year.
And last but not least, the Korea Image Budding Youth Award went to Olympic gold medalist Shim Seok-hee. This 17-year-old short track sensation brought home the gold, silver, and bronze at the 2014 Sochi Winter Olympics. The annual event was attended by 600 people, including Korean actors and dignitaries alike, such as newly appointed U.S. Ambassador to Korea, Mark Lippard.
The image of Korea, it's so positive around the world, but it's also such a hard-working image. But I was just overwhelmed by the warmth and the hospitality shown by the Korean people.
Previous winners of these awards include Samsung Electronics' Galaxy smartphone, singer Psy, and UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon.
I think more than anything, Korean people make the most impact on how Korea is viewed to the world.
Connie Lee, Arirang News.
And a good Tuesday morning to you all as we kick things off with the 2015 Asian Cup as the Korean national football team is set to face off against Kuwait in their second group stage match later today. Now, ranking-wise, the 69th ranked Korean national team is ranked higher than the 125th ranked Kuwait national team, but the overall record is pretty close, with Korea having a slightly better record with 9 wins, 4 draws, and 8 losses. But the big question is whether or not Son Heung-min will be available to play today, as he set out during Monday's practice with flu-like symptoms. Now, big match today as Korea looks to qualify to the next round with a win against Kuwait. Well, none of the players competing in the Asian Cup were nominated for the 2014 Ballon d'Or for the World Player of the Year honors, but still a lot of interest nonetheless, as the award came down to Cristiano Ronaldo, Lionel Messi, and Manuel Neuer. But no surprise here, as the Portuguese international Cristiano Ronaldo was announced by Thierry Henry as the 2014 Ballon d'Or winner, as he gets the nod for the second straight year. Now, so far in 33 appearances in the 2014-2015 season, Ronaldo has scored 33 goals in 28 appearances, including 26 league goals in 16 matches. Now, when SK Wyverns ace Kim Kwang-hyun visited the San Diego Padres last month, everyone thought a deal was near. Well, that wasn't the case, which is why everyone still has their fingers crossed, with Kang Jung-ho set to visit the Pittsburgh Pirates later this week. Now, with about a week left until the deadline, KBO's top shortstop is set to visit the Pittsburgh Pirates on the 14th, with Kang taking a medical on the 15th and the 16th. But now, according to Jim Bowden, an MLB insider for ESPN, the two sides have agreed to a 4-year deal worth $16 million with an option for a 5th year. If the reports are true, the Nexen Heroes keep the $5,002,015 posted by the Pirates. Now, the 2014-2015 V-League season has been an exciting one with so much parity in the season so far. So you can bet the 2015 V-League All-Star game is going to be pretty exciting. And of course, with the fans getting on the voting, there might be parity in the league standings, but the usual players topping the All-Star ballot, as LIG's Kim Yo-han received the most votes in the men's league with 46,333 votes. Now, over on the women's league, Hyundai Hill State's big blogger Yang Hyo-jin received the most votes with 49,233 votes, the most in both leagues. Meanwhile, the All-Star game will take place on January 25th. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day and see you guys again for your sports needs.
Good morning. Now, the cold eased yesterday afternoon, and it should be a lot milder today, with highs hovering way above the seasonal norms this afternoon. But right now, we are waking up to another sub-freezing temperatures, where the readings stand at -5 here in the capital. And clear sunny skies are in store this morning, but early sun will be replaced by increasing clouds. And now the concern is continuous dry weather in the east. dry weather advisory has been in place for more than a month now, so be extra careful with fire. And with that in mind, let's take a closer look at the readings for today. Now, the low in Seoul is kicking off at -5, then the high will jump up to 5 later on, while Daegu and Gwangju should both peak at 9, and Busan will reach 11 this afternoon. And as for the other regions, Jeju Island will rise to 11 later on, while Daejeon and Dokdo will be getting up to 7 and 8 respectively. Now that's all for Korea, and here's international weather for viewers around the world.
Well, that's going to do it for now. Korea Today is coming up at the top of the hour, 7 a.m. Korea time. Have a wonderful day.